Recording in progress.
I didn't want to start recording right now.
I'm glad I saved the name tags here.
Oh my gosh, what have I? Gotta be able to spread and open books. I don't think I'm gonna need my computer. But I'll get on that meeting.
So I should maybe take the microphones.
There's something, yeah, I don't think we need the microphones, but there is something in the speed of this that's a really problematic, or it's the this thing that it's coming on. It's a very bouncy little thing.
Yeah, quite tight here. It's kind of here.
Why isn't that? Where's this trying to speed from? I don't think it's going to work for me to have. There's not an, I don't have a lot of room in this corner now.
Should you, yeah, do you want like me to move people like this way, or do you want me to move like maybe Dandy?
I wonder if I should move to there.
Yeah, and have Dandy be here. 'cause
Yeah,
Anderson-
I mean, as long as I'm up near the top, it's not gonna be too bad, but then I can have this open,
Yeah.
like somebody like. Oh, God. Look at, my mouse is not moving.
Is it on?
Yeah, I just don't understand that
And I think if
mouse.
we take the microphone, more room.
Mhm. It's hard because normally when you're doing a PowerPoint like this, you would have it right. And I want to stop this meeting.
So is any of our tech support gonna be present?
See, I think this is reading off of. There, this is better, because then if I gotta get into here. Sorry, because you tend to, when you have a mouse, you tend to use it even though it's not connected to the computer that you're trying to get into.
I just realized that the agenda kind of came crooked.
Yeah, okay.
It's
It's not
okay.
like they're gonna save it.
Yeah, they're just gonna toss it. Okay, so I think I have enough for all the ones that are gonna be present.
something. This meeting is on, because I want to Creighton to come on early and make sure the sound is working in the other direction. He can do that. Yeah. Probably not need water because I got a full tea here.
I don't know about you, but usually like now that I'm getting older, water filters right through and it's like, okay.
This meeting's being recorded.
Uh-oh.
Just FYI. I'm gonna turn off my phone.
I would say no more.
Make it sound. It's kind of funny. It's my hot plates, my lip gloss. All of a sudden, it just like doesn't work. It's very finicky when it does work. Making me a little nervous.
Nervous?
It's making me nervous how that mouse works. I mean, I would take another mouse any day. Let me see if I could. See,
Is your mouse in your office cordless?
yes, but it has to have somewhere to plug into, and there's nowhere for this one to plug into on this.
Don't you plug it in the little thing that's on the wall?
But I feel like if it's having trouble right here,
Uh-huh.
I mean, maybe that's why it's having trouble, is because it's got to go through that wall. I don't know. Do you have any other mouse pads by chance? This, I don't know if it's the mouse pad or not.
Oh, it might be.
I don't. Oh, no, it's just this mouse just stops and goes.
The mouse.
Am I sitting next to you?
Can you sit, do you want to sit here?
I will sit wherever you want me to
Yeah.
sit.
I was trying to sit there, but I didn't have the room.
Yes,
to get
I
this
get it.
laid out.
I didn't get my
Of
glasses.
course, I need my Altoids and my lip gloss and
And,
everything.
uh,
There's more of this.
Oh, did I? Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Aren't they pretty?
Favorite, yeah. Hi, Karen.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Good.
Or someone. Guys,
Yeah, well-
crawl through the scene. I had this gone.
Oh,
I'm like, I'm sorry, that's what my boss, but I'm not going to. Excuse me.
it's the most exciting meeting you'll have all year, right?
Budget meeting.
It's done. Oh,
Yeah.
today. It passed.
I like your attitude. That's really what I want it to be too. My
Passed
goal.
and-
Creighton was supposed to log in early so we could make sure the sound was working. So we have new cameras and they actually follow the activity.
Oh,
What?
Let's see if it works.
Yeah.
Oh, fancy.
Testing, testing. It's not moving, is it? Can you
Nope.
see me?
It will. Keep waiting a little bit. It will.
Should I like jump up and down, do different jets or something?
I was doing it when me and Tracy were in the room and she would move over there and it would shift over to her.
Would she have to talk when it was? for it
No,
to-
she'd just be walking.
Oh,
Is it on the, is it because it's small screen?
What I wonder is
oh,
it's
right.
because there's so many of us. No, we had it on small screen before,
Oh, you-
but there's so many of us, there's more people here.
So that's why, oh.
So we gotta like freeze.
Okay.
Oh, there's
yeah, there it
Sandra.
goes.
Yep, there you are.
That's the trick. Oh, that's kind of creepy.
I know.
So I guess, Danny, you don't need microphones because our new system will
Nice.
trigger the voice.
Okay. so-
Really?
Yeah.
In
So we're
theory.
gonna, that's why Creighton needs to log in any minute now and we'll be testing all of that.
Wow.
Is he under,
That should just be me, right? I don't know if slideshow will work. I might try going to that because what happens is that if I'm in slideshow. Let me put this down here.
do you have the agenda for them to look at, or are they gonna just go on the agenda here, Karen?
The agenda's on paper for
Okay,
everybody,
very good.
but it follows on here on the agenda follows the
Okay.
notes. I did a few things. only.
And you have-
You can use these.
Yeah, we got it. Sorry.
oh, it's okay. And you have your, the. Oh,
The verbiage for passage.
yes,
Yes, at the very end.
Of the word pack of this.
And I also
or-
gave little blurbs
in here.
on inviting.
Where is that? Where is
All I
it?
have-
It's in the PowerPoint.
Oh, in the PowerPoint, so you can read it off. the
okay.
screen.
all right.
Hard time seeing.
Have you seen that they have now
Oh, this will-
supposedly drops that you can put in your eyes for anybody? So if you have bifocals and things like that, there's now a drop supposedly. that's gonna make
Yeah,
that
I
happen.
heard about that.
I haven't, you've got to talk to the eye
I
doctor
saw,
about that.
like,
but
you know,
we'll see if
You
that's
put it in
true.
once a day?
I don't know what, how many times you have to put it in and things like that, but if that's
I
for
wanna
real, I'm gonna,
Right?
I gotta see my eye doctor.
Because
here.
these are, I have bifocal contacts and it work.
No, Sue has those too,
I
and
know.
I couldn't, it would
Oh,
mess
there are
with me too
people
much
in here.
walking up and down stairs is what it mess with me, so.
I believe we were on. the meeting, and there are people in the watching.
Oh, well, good.
We'll
Hello,
make sure.
hello out there in Cyberland. Is Anna gonna be on Zoom today?
I think so. What's the chat say?
I can hear and see well.
oh,
Hi,
that's,
Creighton.
Hi, Graydon.
But he's
So-
not talking. so-
Right, because he's not, you have to admit them.
Okay, so I did it doesn't say admit right here. It says invite. So I go to invite and I do Creighton. Invite people. Oh, what's going on with that part? There. Did that get them in? I feel like I'm just sending an invite. Oh dear.
I can't see it very well, so I'm just, I have to come closer. Can I stop sharing your screen for a
Yep.
minute? Let me get this one.
All right, stand for the pledge allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you all for coming. Introductions of committee. Oh, good thing I have this in front of me. So, everybody knows everybody here, so, but, I'm Henry Bustamante, Maria Capodovetto. We're missing Ana Contreras, Maria Contreras, and Angie Torin. We have Ellen Hansen, Karen Hendricks, Jenny Jones, and David Moreno. Arturo's also absent, right?
Correct.
Okay.
And I actually would point out on page 4, Arturo's name is PEZA, and that will be changed in the
Okay. All right, so we're to elect some committee officers, and they have to come from our 5 over there. So first order of business is nominations. Anyone can nominate, including self-nominations. Obviously, do not require a second. Are there nominations for budget committee chair? Now we vote. Or anybody has questions? We have to get something out there.
You may, yes.
Okay, I nominate Ellen.
I said, yeah.
There doesn't have to be a second.
There is not, so. And now we just go to a vote.
Yeah.
It does
Or
Alan have a
say,
choice?
is there
Does Alan
any
have
more-
a choice?
Well, he
No.
can decline.
Well, I'd prefer to go to somebody who knows what they're doing, but
Well, Everybody has to start
Yeah,
sometime,
we
so.
all
And we try to script it too as we go along.
yes, I'm fine.
Okay, so I vote, so the vote starts for, I nominate Ellen Hansen for chair on the budget committee. All in favor?
Aye.
Hear everybody say that? Aye. Okay, all right, so that is done. We have Alan. Now we need also to elect a vice chair. No, it has to be one of you guys.
Oh, they all have to be us?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So the first person that chose, so I guess Jenny Jones would be the next one.
I would, that would be fine.
All right, so we're nominating Jenny Jones for the vice chair. All in favor?
Aye.
Good to go. All right, so now we hand it over to Ellen. And,
Okay, meeting
we
adjourned.
Okay. So I guess we're gonna go from here. We're gonna let, from here, we're gonna go to Dan and start doing something here. So new budget committee responsibility.
Yes. Well, thank you for being out here tonight. We appreciate your volunteer service, and we know that, May is always crazy for everyone. And but we could not do this work without your volunteer time, so thank you. So your responsibilities for tonight, and as a member of the budget committee, is to hear the budget message, which I'll present here shortly. To hear and consider any public comment that there might be, and I'm not anticipating that there will be much, to discuss and revise the budget as needed. And also make sure that any time throughout the message or the presentation, that if you have questions, you stop and ask us the questions, because sometimes you might forget as we're proceeding through this. And then your next responsibility would to be approve the budget. And then you would approve the tax rate and the levy amount. And that's at the very end of the documents. And, there's scripts for the motion and all of that so that you don't have to think of it on the fly. So we've got you covered there. What the budget committee does not do is you don't set salaries, benefits, or contract terms. Those are negotiated agreements between our labor unions. And you don't set staffing levels or organization structure decisions. We have created the budget for your consideration based on what we determined with our current staffing and our principals and leadership team, what we're going to need to be able to function as a school district next year, and that's what this budget reflects. And then decide if a program or service should be provided. Again, we have determined those decisions for you, and that's created the budget, or make or alter district goals or policies. So those are the tasks that you're not in charge of. I see there's a chat right there, Karen.
Okay.
So did you have any questions about those responsibilities or clarifying?
Oh, Anna's here.
Okay,
Okay,
so you can promote her to a panelist.
okay,
So go down to participants
okay,
and the bottom screen
okay.
over right there.
Okay.
If you click on there you go. And then you click on Anna and you go over to more. Promote to panelist, and then she should be able to kick over.
Okay,
And I'll monitor that as we're going through here. Right? Sometimes it takes a minute for it to get that way. Okay. Okay, so I'll just make sure that Anna, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Do we have quorum?
Yeah, we do.
We do.
Yes.
Yes, we do.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Uh-huh. Okay, so you'll see that the agenda is before you tonight. And the idea is that you're going to walk through components of the agenda. We'll open it up for the public comment. And then after we've gone over the proposal, we open it up again for any kind of public comment. And then any questions that you might have or discussions you want to have amongst yourselves about our budget. And then if you decide that you need an additional meeting, we have one scheduled for next Thursday. It's already in the book, but you only have to have that if you feel like you're not able to adopt or accept this budget. If you decide that there's other questions that you want clarification on and we're not able to provide those to you, then we would have a second budget meeting to do that. Or you could decide that what you've been provided is sufficient and you are ready to approve the proposed budget and send it on to your school board, and then we would adjourn. All right, so with that said,
Alan now calls for public comment.
yes. Yes.
Is there any public comment? Hearing none, let's move forward.
Nobody in
Thank you.
chat, nobody in Fiberland?
There
either,
doesn't
so-
seem to be anything there.
There
So
will be another opportunity.
yes, there
Yes.
will be. So if you look at your budget book on section 1 or under tab 1, there is a written copy of my budget message. But I am going to read it to you for the public record because we are recording the meeting, and also for anybody out there in the audience who wants to understand how this particular budget was created. This proposed budget is based on the funding levels established for the state school fund by the Oregon State Legislature during their 2021 session. As a review, the budget approved by the state and made available through the state school fund formula was based on $9.3 billion, which failed to meet the amount needed to provide what is considered same level of services. Education officials established the funding amount needed to keep the current level of services for this biennium at $9.6 billion. Minimally, what this $300 million shortfall meant for the Jervis School District were funding deficits of about $400,000 in each year of the biennium. During the 21-22 fiscal year, the district was able to use state and federal COVID-19 relief dollars to help bridge the funding gap created by the state of Oregon, as well as the 21-22 one-time savings described in last year's budget message. As a review, the one-time savings included using classified staff food services, allowing savings to the general fund, and capitalizing on the additional monies provided from the National School Lunch Program. Negotiated with both labor organizations and took advantage of the work share program. We secured the retirement and rehire of 3 administrators, saving PERS-related costs. We made decisions to adjust staffing based on student numbers. We saved fund substitute costs, travel, workshops, and extra duty. While these actions helped stave off the significant reductions during the 21-22 budget year, the coming year's budget proposal reflects a more realistic picture of the state of the district. All of this is occurring while the state continues to collect revenue far exceeding projections, resulting in historic kicker refunds to taxpayers and unprecedented amounts of the reserves in the state coffers, which is not translating into more funds available to school districts. During the 21-22 school year, the district continued to experience declining enrollment in part due to the COVID-19 pandemic. From March of 2020 to May of 2022, the district is down about 100 students, which equates to a minimal loss in 22-23 of $975,200. The biggest enrollment impact seen at the elementary school, where 5 years ago enrollment was at 425 students, and last week enrollment was at 348 students. We are seeing an uptick in the number of families registered for kindergarten roundup, which we believe to be associated with the ending of the pandemic, and families feeling more confident that schools will remain open. However, some of the enrollment decline can also be attributed to the lack of affordable housing for younger families in this community. This area of concern has been brought to the attention of the Jervis City Council by the district, but largely it is out of the district's control. This budget proposal reflects staff reductions at all buildings and in all programs and supports actual enrollment levels with plans in place to be able to quickly pivot and meet needs of additional students should they enroll in the fall. Even with these reductions, the district will still use approximately $430,000 of the ESSER III federal relief monies for staffing costs during the 22-23 school year, leaving approximately $600,000 unspent. While there is conversation beginning to occur throughout the state regarding what the Oregon Department of Education has identified as the funding cliff that all districts in the state are facing, I'm not hopeful that anything will be resolved for the coming year, and it would be prudent for the district to plan that this issue will not be resolved in the coming biennium either. The district has until September of 2024 to spend all of the ESSER III funds, so the $600,000 could be quickly depleted in the 23-24 budget. Additionally, the district was hoping to use some of this money to pay for HVAC upgrades to the elementary school and a portion of the high school, as these are allowable uses of these funds, and both of those buildings continue to require significant air ventilation upgrades, as became evident during the pandemic. The major factors shaping the 22-23 budget include a continued decrease in the state school fund resources, continued declining enrollment, specifically at Jervis Elementary School, and a decrease in the charter school enrollment, required adjustments to the 2020-21 state school fund based on final enrollment reconciliations to be realized during the 21-22 fiscal year, projected to result in a reduction of $373,780. We will also have adjustments for the 21-22 fiscal year, as original estimates have not been realized. The statewide reduction in students created an unusual readjustment of the state school funding formula, which resulted in a slight increase to the 21-22 funding, but not enough to offset the low student numbers facing Jervis School District in the current fiscal year. An enrollment projection based on 845 students and a weighted enrollment, or ADMW, estimated at 1,135 students. We started the 21-22 fiscal year with a generous general fund beginning fund balance of nearly $3.3 million due to the strategic decisions made in 2021. Our beginning fund balance for 22-23 is projected at $1.8 million, a deficit of $1.5 million from the 21-22 fiscal year. Negotiated salary increases for staff resulted in an increase in staffing costs from 21-22 to 22-23 of approximately $700,000. Use of special fund revenues from federal and state emergency monies in response to COVID-19 to offset staff reductions. use of student investment account and the high school success funds to provide robust and diverse programming, keeping the district attractive to transfer students and those currently enrolled. Continued savings utilized for the PERS obligation bond sold in 2003, and the second one sold in 2021, resulting in a lower rate paid by the district. Clearly defined goals regarding curriculum, instruction, staffing, and technology to best support all students with a targeted focus on reading at the elementary level and moving students out of the English language learners program within 4 years of being identified. Bringing the district's contingency fund to the state recommended 8%, and continued dedication of charter school payments into a separate account, which requires board approval to spend. With regard to the state school funding, the following are the current allocations for our state school funding, along with the estimate for 22-23. For the 22-23 general purpose grant per extended average daily membership weighted, which is your ADMW, is $9,354. The 22-23 total formal revenue extended average daily membership weighted at ADMW is $9,752. And for 22-23 estimate of 1,135 ADMW times $9,752 total formula revenue, which includes taxes, resulting in $11,068,520. So as a summary, this proposed 22-23 general fund budget is $19,455,755, a decrease of $1,336,973. The district has debts for the 2003 PERS bond. Our final payment is in 2028. The 2021 PERS bond, final payment in 2040, and the consolidation loan, last installment due in 2033. In addition, the district has an energy project equipment lease or loan, and the last installment is due in 2039. The total proposed 22-23 budget, including the general fund, special revenue fund, debt service fund, and capital project fund, is $29,057,074, a decrease of $3,166,774 from the 2021-22 adopted budget. While many of these areas are not ideal, this budget, crafted with the input of all building principals and department heads, still provides a quality education experience for students and continues to support the district's vision of graduating resilient, responsible students whose learning extends to the global community beyond Jervis. Thank you.
I'm gonna now go over the budget document.
Wait, can I
And-
ask a quick
Yeah,
question?
go ahead.
So are you estimating to have 1,135 in enrollments next year from the 845 that we currently have?
So the 845 is not extended ADMW.
Oh,
So, you have, so for those of you that are not familiar with the budgeting terms that the state uses. So when you have one student, that's one. But if you have a student with other considerations where they might need additional assistance for their education, maybe they're ELL, they're a pregnant or parenting teen, special education, then they are worth more than one. So that's how you get the extended ADMW. So that is what that is, an 845, but we are anticipating some will be with 1.1 or 1.5, some will be 2. So that's what we're.
So if you look on page 16, which doesn't actually have a page number on it, because it went into the black. So if you go to 15 and go one past. This is the calculation for the HMW. And you'll see the 1335, which is our figure for our kids in the seats, plus the figure for Frontier Charter. And then the different weights, like the ESL program gives it an extra half a weight. We have 11%. Oh, that is under tab 4. And it's just past the 2021 enrollment by grade on page 15, just one past that. So you'll see the different weights that
Looks like this.
and so they do this as a collective with Frontier Charter. And so we have to break out and figure out, well, what are we gonna be just for Jervis School District, and that's where that 1135 comes from.
Does Frontier Charter expect an increase in their enrollment this next year?
No. So I've got some numbers on that further in. I've got a little graph on that, so.
I think one thing that COVID did is it did not help our real online charter schools. Because when all schools became online charter schools, well, if we did that well, we would have been doing it before COVID. And so then what it demonstrated is that for those people who online charter would have been an option, it gave them a really poor experience overall. And so now the actual online charter schools are really fighting this PR battle to be able to recruit people, because the people that they normally would have recruited have had this bad experience. So, and it's not just Frontier Charter that's having that, but, Oregon Connections Academy, all of them are seeing some kind of weird. Adjustment.
All right, so I'm gonna start on the fund definitions, which is your tab 3 on page 7. And I'm just gonna point out. Yeah, sorry, you have to go backwards.
We're jumping through.
Yeah, that's the funding formula is pretty complicated, but we put it in there and we're always willing to go over it if you want to go over it, but it's kind of it's something that's it's difficult to pinpoint for any business manager who's been doing it for a long time, because they have some smoothing they do at the state school fund level. So it's not like some true number where you can just do the math, and come up with it. So it's kind of a complicated formula, but we do our best to get to that figure. So for the fund definitions, I'm pointing out a few items. On page 7, there's a new fund called Fund 206, Health and Wellness. We're using that for the funds that are being collected towards a new walking path that they're building. And that's something that's being, quite a few different little grants are being supplied for helping with that. And then on page 10, we have a new fund called Fund 247. And what we're doing is we're putting the excise tax only in that fund. Before, it was combined in Fund 240 with like rents, when we have facility use rents and a couple other little items. And we really want to just isolate the excise tax and see it separately. So we are splitting that out. Then there's an error on the same page. It's listed as Fund 250 for food service. That's what it used to be, but the state is dictating a little more on what fund numbers they want us to use, and they want us to use 299. So we have done kind of a crosswalk process, and that is actually now called Fund 299. So that will be fixed in the actual budget document. And then on page 11, Fund 258 is a new retention and recruitment grant that we will be receiving for next year. And it is kind of a response to COVID as well, a smaller grant in response to COVID. Right, and
So
then-
with these new funds,
Mhm.
funds were attached to them?
Yes, yes. So yes, so the health and wellness, we already knew we had some money. We started with 10,000, and then we've already got another 5,000 grant. We're seeing some more come in.
Okay.
Excise tax, we get, those taxes are coming in all the time.
Right.
But the retention and recruitment is new, and we are programmed to get 100 and
Our district is 131,000, in Frontier Charter is around 30-some thousand. And that's brand new. The application comes out in theory tomorrow.
yeah, we still have to apply, but we're gonna get it.
Yeah.
It's one of those, they make us work for all of these grants.
And what if it's to help, it says for the retention and recruitment of teachers? Is that what-
Teachers and classified staff, because
Oh,
that's
and
been a really
classified too.
big struggle too. So,
Oh,
yeah, so there's certain ways that they say that we can use the funds, and so we have to kind
so
of.
it's like percent on bonuses or things like
It
that?
could be any of those things. We haven't, the actual application hasn't been put out yet, so. But the
Excellent.
different areas of money can be bonuses. It can be paying for extra time, like for teachers, planning time. It can be for, you worked with us the whole year, so here's a bonus. Oh, you're coming back next year. Thank you for coming back. Here's a bonus.
Yeah.
We're gonna need mentoring for a lot of our newer teachers because they really missed out on the actual student teaching experiences and that kind of thing. So we'll also use that money for that.
Very good.
And then the debt service on page 13, and I'm sorry, the bars, I can't really put it any lower than that. So page 12 starts our debt service funds, and if you flip over to page 13, that's our new PERS pension obligation bond fund, is Fund 314. And then as one more point, we have the capital project funds. This fund is very small right now. It's kind of been sitting idle for a number of years. But if the bond passes, then we would need to do a supplemental budget and, bring that up to match what we will be receiving for the bond.
That's where the bond money would go in.
That's where that thought will go. All right, slide. And now we go to tab 4. And some of these graphics were in your, the budget book that I'm going to show up here. But I also think I have a new one or two in here. So we start with the enrollment, and what we're showing is just, these are the grades, kindergarten through 12th grade. That was cut off a little bit in your books, but from 18-19 to 2021, and those are completed years. That's why we can look at this. And these are reports that the state, kind of gives us the data for. Our kindergarten classes are down almost 30%. Or kindergarten class is down that much. And all of these elementary classes, with the exception here of 4th grade is a little bit up, are down from this 3-year mark. Up at the high school, you do see some higher, there's 3 classes there that are higher and have some higher numbers. Then the next one, I feel like this is kind of,
The red line, is that the average?
I don't think the red line is a very good red line because it's not really the average. If you put it here, I think it's going to be closer to 20 in the negative. So I think they kind of got this. I think it didn't quite go
Okay.
where it was supposed to go on there. This is one that's generated from our forecast 5, and they gather data from all different sources. And so, yeah, that's not right as far as that part goes. All right, so the enrollment by grade, this is 2021. And when you look at it, it's a nice staircase up. The problem is that staircase is going in the wrong direction. So we would, ideally you'd want to see your lower classes coming in high, and feeding into the upper grades. But that's not what we're seeing. We just, see it. That's when that senior class falls off, which currently includes that Samuel Brown Academy on Sideland. And then we replace it with a class under 50. That's not a good replacement. That's how we're losing, our student count. So yeah,
But this
again, we're hoping for kindergarten to be,
Right, and this isn't just us. That's pretty much statewide with all the different schools right now. right?
yes, yeah, this is statewide. And I think they were down 30,000 statewide for students this year.
In the elementary side or for overall?
Overall, but I think it focused more on that little.
It did. It focused more on the elementary level, and which makes sense
Makes
because
sense.
with the pandemic,
Yeah.
parents needed to have reliable
Yeah.
schedules so that they could work. So,
Yes. All right, so this is a different one that is relating to the Frontier Charter enrollment.
That's what I'm-
is this in our package?
No, this is not in your
Okay.
packet.
This
This
is
is an
the-
added one. I'm gonna put this up here so you can see
There we go.
this graph.
Perfect.
So as you can see, from 14-15, actually 15-16 is when we started this kind of slow, steady decline. We've gone from 1068 to 845. So it's not just COVID impacted. It's actually a trend that we're seeing here at Jervis. And Frontier Charter, we put their numbers in here as well in red. And were growing really fast,
Yeah.
and they're seeing in 2021, they're seeing some of that impact from COVID. And then this year, they have just been dropping students. So I put this graph together, and I also kind of reached out to Melissa at Frontier Charter to get, figures on how many of their students are in Jervis School District boundaries, that would mean they're not our students anymore, they're Frontier charters. And there's only 8. So these kids come from all over the state. But in addition, she informed me that this 470 is down 27. So now right now, today, they're at 443. So they're really seeing some kind of rapid declines in their student numbers. And so they are projecting right now at 425. They may decide to take that even lower. We'll see what happens with them.
Is there an explanation for that? Because you would think they would be stay steady if nothing else.
Yeah, I know. They just have really kind of just been hit with it. And
Is it online?
they're fully
Fully
online,
online.
and they were growing really well and doing
Well,
really
that would be
well.
it, because I'm seeing a lot of kids like joining schools right now.
Mhm.
So I think that's what some of them are probably doing.
Yeah,
Could be. Yeah, they're just staying in their own districts or wherever they're from.
right. It's a really awkward mouse for me. Okay. Now, when we're looking at general fund, and I don't think I'm missing anything here. There. General fund is under tab 5. So we can move to tab 5 now. So when you're looking at general fund data, general fund includes a fund number 100, which is your basic general fund. It can include 101, which is the charter school, but I include the charter school where I indicate that it's been included. And then 105, the grant indirects, those are always rolled into the general fund in all of these figures. This is the weirdest mouse. Oh my goodness. Just got to get it on the screen. Okay. All right, so when this budget is being presented to you, it starts out with the resources, which are also called revenues. And so the first, we do a 100 revenue recap summary that includes the charter. And then we have, these recap, the revenue recap summaries, those are ones that I put together. And then the 100 resources report is generated from our accounting system. And that's the way that it comes out through the accounting system is the way that we are required to show it to fulfill, Department of Revenue laws for it. But as you will look, when you were looking through, it probably wasn't really super easy to follow. So that's why I do the summary pages ahead of it. And then that's followed by Fund 101 Resources Report, which is your charter school only. So I do break out these resource reports, the big ones that are generated by our accounting system, into charter only and then without charter for us. Okay, and then when we get to the revenue side, again, there's a requirement summary with the charter by function. And then there's followed by a requirements function graph without the charter. So I take them out and show you graphically what that looks like for us. And then there's a requirement summary with the charter by object, and then a requirements graph again without the charter. And then the big report, which is without the charter for the first report and then charter only for the second report. So this is just showing you the same thing in different ways. Function is kind of like what group of students is this, or is this funding for? The object is what did you buy? Did you buy supplies? Did you buy staff salaries? So that's how we are required to break it out: fund, function, object. Okay, so we are in tab 5 now, and if you go to page 20, which is the very first page, there's just a few things I'd like to point out here. Under the line 3101 State School Fund, Jervis School District, you'll see we actually go up slightly because we are in this 49-51 biennium. And so we are in the 51 side of it. So there's a little bit of an increase there with that. And then the Frontier Charter is taking quite a big hit. So that, we see quite a reduction there, 696. The majority of that is really due to Frontier Charter. And then down on the cash used to balance the budget. So when you see that phrase, it's referred to as the beginning fund balance. When we end our fiscal year, there's an ending fund balance. That ending fund balance comes over and becomes our beginning fund balance to help balance the budget. So we budgeted for Jervis School District for that beginning fund balance to be 3.134 million. It actually was 3.3 million. So we were doing things right to bring in a nice hefty beginning fund balance. We are projecting out that that is only going to be 1.935 million coming into the 22-23 school year. So that's a deficit of almost 1.2 million there. And so overall, for our resources, we are down by about 1.336 million, but it does include Frontier Charter in there.
So Karen, I heard all your words.
Mhm.
and
Yeah,
I
you got it.
followed it, but I'm not sure I understand the, so if it was 3.1 on this paper, but you said it was really 3.3, that was at the beginning of this school year? Is that right,
Yes,
Jen?
yes. So the 3.134,
Mhm.
that was our budget. So what you're seeing now is what we adopted in 21-22 because, and then what we are proposing.
So it was
How-
really 3.3,
Right.
but then now you're proposing 1.9. So is
Right.
that just a reflection of a lot of money was spent and the previous year because schools closed down and yada, yada, there's money to be saved?
It actually is more that we're not going to get as much as we thought for funding our students because our students didn't come back as we anticipated they would. And so when you see the difference here in, we're taking a hit in that category. So we are paying 2021 is hitting us this year. And we're going to see a deficit of about 367,000. And we're planning for that. That's reflected in this balance that's going to move in. We're also have an adjustment because our student count is low right now and the state has just done an adjustment on us for
So they
that.
took some money away?
Yep, they're taking money away right now from us.
So it's not our money, it's state money that we get every year.
Yeah, we get it. And then they don't reconcile. They just are finishing reconciling 2021. And then they come back and take. But if you didn't, most of the time you're getting money when those things happen.
And so what happens is that they give you your quarterly payment or is
Mhm.
it a quarterly payment based on what they think is going to happen. And then when it is lower than what they adjust your next payment. So you thought you were going to get X number of dollars, but they decide, no, we're adjusting it and it's
Yeah.
going to be less.
Mhm.
So it's
Okay.
a little tricky to
Mhm.
budget in that system.
And then does this budget also reflect that even though there's less students, they're allotting more money per student? Is that already built into this?
As far as, yes, so everything, I really had to work hard on this piece, trying to figure out, and it was kind of sad, actually, because I thought we were gonna be around 2.2 million, and it just kept getting worse because of all these adjustments coming in. And they did what's called it was some transparency report, and it really kind of hurt the charter school. I mean, they're not, if they were just apples to apples as far as, there's a 2-year look back on this. So if we're low this year, then we get to look back to last year and stay at that funding level. So that happened and it was good this year until they realized we weren't as good at last year as they thought we were. And so it's like both things are adjusting themselves.
And all throughout last year, they did not actually allow school districts to drop kids. And so we
Right.
continued to have kids on our books that were not here,
Mhm.
not just our district, every district. So normally what would happen is that as you're seeing kids leave, you're making adjustment, like Karen would contact state or make the adjustment. Hey, you know what? We actually don't have this number of kids. We have this number of kids. Okay, so then it's a conversation and they're adjusting. The state would not let us drop kids. So we continue to have this artificial number on the books. And so now here we are.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That that fills in the question mark.
And we did know that this was a high beginning fund balance at the, when we
Mhm.
brought in the 3.3 million. And we knew we were going to use that to kind of maintain these staffing levels that we had because the kids needed it. There was, the staffing demand was so high this year because everything, all the extra stuff we had to do when they were coming in and out and, getting them back on track with their learning, there was high staff needs. All right. That was page 20. I will.
This is kind of an aside question, but I don't think there's gonna be any specific place in this budget to ask it, but staff retention, I mean, I know there's fun down there, there's not, but what is that looking like for next year, like from this year to next year? Is the bulk of the staff that's able to returning? Like this invited back returning, or do you even know that? Does that?
Yeah, we are not having a mass resignation like other districts might be reporting. We do have some people that are retiring.
Right.
Which, oh, good for them. They should be able to retire. We do have a couple people who reside because their spouses are moving out of state, so of course they're going. But this budget does actually reflect some reductions. But for the most part, we're able to absorb that because we did some temporary hires. So we're just not hiring them back. But there are a couple of people that will not be renewed.
All right, and this is just a graphic of this, that page we were just on, page 20. And it just shows where most of our funding comes from state, in the general fund. 69% comes from state sources. The other big pocket is local sources. And local sources are our taxes, which have been higher than anticipated. And one of the things that happens in the funding formula is they have, when we're referring to the total revenue funding formula, they say, here's how much this high number 97, we're going to give you for your student count. Now they take that number, and then they subtract off your taxes, and then they actually give you that amount. So your taxes that we're collecting, when they're high, you think, oh, great, we got some extra revenue. They instantly take it off of what you receive from the state school fund. So it's kind of a bummer.
So we don't benefit from our own taxes.
No, but
Brilliant.
yeah, we have to charge it.
That resulted because of Measure 5. Remember when in Measure 5, they, because your really wealthy districts would charge themselves extra taxes so that they can provide all these extra programs that they wanted to provide for their students. And then the cry became, well, that's not fair because there are other districts that can't afford to tax themselves that much. And so those kids don't have an equal education. So that's when Measure 5 came in and it capped, like you could charge X, and if you start charging Y, then we're taking money away from your school fund.
Pass it on, but if you raise that, it doesn't even matter.
Yeah, so you don't want to raise the permanent
No,
rate.
and we've had our permanent rate stayed the same for as far back as I could.
Research,
So,
yeah.
All right. So now I'm just taking the revenue and breaking out the revenue in blue, is Jervis School District's revenue. And this is all of our general fund revenue, excluding the beginning fund balances. And then up here is Frontier Charters revenue. And I find this, interesting because, 17, 18, 22, 23, look at our revenue in general fund. It's like flatlining, but our staff salaries continue to climb. And our cost for our utilities and our buses, our supplies continue to go up. Kind of, sorry, it's like a bleaker budget meeting. Okay, so then to page 22. This is the revenue for the charter school. And one of the things that I wanted to point out here is that back in 2021, we moved the charter school revenue and payments into its own separate fund because we were before that relying on those funds for our day-to-day operations. And as a charter school, they can decide to go somewhere else. I mean, they don't have to stay within our district to be part of our district. We have a good relationship with them and they benefit us greatly to be here. But there's always that in the back of our mind. So we just want to be aware of that and keep that separated out as a different pocket. And so since 2021, we have now, I'm projecting that we will have $730,000 in the beginning fund balance moving into the 2023 school year in that fund.
Because of the charter school.
Because charter school, yes. And that's just reflecting, since those 2 years really, 2021 and 21-22, the revenues that we can set aside that we gathered because of that.
So is the charter school, like, are you the superintendent of it as well, even though it's not a charter school? Are we their administration and such?
No, they have their own school board. They are accountable to us, so if they do something inappropriate, then we can say, we're not sponsoring you anymore, you'll have to go away. But we don't have anything to do with their day-to-day operations or their hiring or any of that.
Are any of their people housed out of here?
Nope.
Okay, so it's just kind of on paper, this thing. And
They
we
rent
sponsor
Pioneer School from us. They have some office space there for Melissa, their business manager, and then they have a secretarial registrar type person that has space there. And then when they do professional development or they want to come together as a staff, face to face, they use that building to do that as well.
So our agreement with them is that when the amount that's generated from their student count in the state school fund, they get, basically, we get 5% plus another 2.5% for administrative fees. So they get effectively 92.5 and we get 7.5. And that's what's adding up to create that
But
7.
you do like all the budget work for them?
Nope, they do
No?
all of their own.
Okay.
Oh, it's just found money.
Yeah,
I mean,
that-
it made-
okay.
it
I would-
made so
I
much
would-
sense to do it. So,
Oh, yeah.
because it was money that was out there and it was available to us if we chose to sponsor them, right?
Yeah.
That's what we did. And so,
They had a good program.
yeah, and it's been it's been good. So,
Yes.
yeah.
Okay, so a few more things to review in general fund. Let's start on page 23-24. And this is where we break it down by function. And so the first function here is instruction. And you will see that in many of the categories here, we have reductions equaling about 1.929 million reduced. That does have the charter school payments in there, which is about 1 million of that, but we still have our own fair share for us. And then when you move to support services, 2000s, if you look on the next page, page 24, what you'll see is a $479,000 increase in that area. We can take instructional staff and move them into grants as it fits and as we are allowed to do it. But there's not grants that are intended for throwing a principal into it, or a superintendent, or transportation, or custodial services. So these are areas that, we can shift a funding to a different funding source. They need to usually stay right in that same funding source. And so that's why you see that one going higher.
So on the instruction, that doesn't reflect the reduction in FTE, it's just how the funds are allocated.
This instructional, it is reflecting a reduction in FTE because some of those FTE came from each building. When we saw their student counts, what they needed for staffing, that does include that.
Okay.
That's why we have those reductions there. And also some were shifts, just, okay, if we can get this person funded over here, let's move them over to there. So it wasn't a straight, and you'll see some high numbers when we look at a couple other tabs. The other thing on page 24, you'll notice one of the biggest increases is our operation and maintenance of plant. That's not only the staffing piece, that's also our utilities, They're keeping our, our supplies for that. And it is not an area where we feel like we can cut staff because we have aging buildings and they are constantly running around fixing things all over the district. So it's important to, and especially now, when we have to keep these places really clean too. COVID. Okay, so on 24, there is also an error under 6,000 contingencies. Operating contingency that says Frontier Charter, it should actually be the one right above it.
So it's not the 959.
No, the
54 is this.
954 is our contingency and the 730 is the Frontier Charter.
Oh, so just have to
contingency.
flip.
Yeah, so that will be fixed in the official books. All right, and then the next one is page 26. Now, this is the same information, but now you're seeing it by object. And so you see the salaries and benefits as a whole, and you'll see they are right basically about the same, even though we did have reductions in the instructional side. And then you see the purchase services, there's a reduction there.
That go back, salaries and benefits look the same because they got raises.
Yeah.
There's fewer of them, but they
Yeah.
got their steps there. Yeah.
And so the purchase services, we found that reduction is because we found, I had found some sped budget that we could move and just get rid of because we were using our ESD local service plan allocation. So ESD gets some money on our behalf. We can order services from them and use funds that way. And so we were able to reduce that down, which helped us balance the budget. And of course, Frontier Charter is lower. And that's about it that I wanted to show on this page as far as the object. And then on page 28, look down below the function 1111, 100 salaries. Just our salaries, and we have, that is down by 5.38. And those are due to reductions, and this is elementary school, by the way, that's the primary. Reductions of staffing, they were overstaffed. And a little bit of movement to IDEA, which is our SPED grant, our large SPED grant, a little bit over to Title 1A. And then also some funding, with some ESSER funding was used. And in addition, if we can move a staff and code them under ELL, we want to do that because we get those extra weights for ELL. So we need to kind of show that we have staff who fulfill those needs of ELL students. So there's a little bit of shift in that as well. And so the next page is page 31. 31 is, again, if you look under 1131 high school programs, 100 salaries. You'll see that 17.7.74 was the budget for 21-22 and 14.8 for 22-23. There was some, again, reductions, also moving some of the staff salaries to Measure 98 grant, which is also called the High School Success Grant. Did a little bit of movement in there with their staff as well.
So we didn't actually lose the 3 employees.
No, there was some, we did,
We
You know,
lose some, but.
there was some not refilled positions.
So we've had someone retire, we
Yeah,
will
yeah, yeah.
hire that person back.
No, I'm just
Yeah.
saying. no,
Yeah, they didn't, we didn't lay off 3 people.
Well, no, I mean, I'm just asking,
Mhm.
3 people are missing.
No,
They're
No.
busy.
Yeah, people are
Yeah.
missing, but the funds are being allocated from
Yes,
different sources, so
yes.
they don't need to show up here. Got it.
yes. Yeah, it is harder at the middle schools and the high school because there's a certain curriculum you have to supply them with, even if your student counts are low in those classes. You do your best to fit them, but sometimes it just doesn't fit to, it's not easy because you've got all these different subject matters. All right, so now we are going to page 53. So you saw those big cuts, but then when you go down to 53, it doesn't look quite as bad. It's a total of 5 FTE. And that's because some of the the movement was within this general fund too. Moving into an ELL coding. So that's a total down of five. All right. Okay, and so in this is just kind of showing a graphic without Frontier Charter of by function of our expenditures. And we have about 45.8 in instruction, 43.7 in support services. And then there's a little bit in contingency. And then a lot of other areas.
And that's generally what the rest of the state schools look like.
It's similar to what they would look like. And it can look different depending on like how they do transportation,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, and our,
But in general, about the majority it goes into instruction,
yes,
roughly equal to support services.
right.
What we're fortunate to be able to do is because we do have the SIA money, the student investment account money, we're able to do things like textbook or curriculum adoption. So like right here, you'll see the other side of the posters, language arts materials. So we have not purchased a K-12 English language arts materials in probably 3 cycles. And that's every 7 years. So it's been more than 20 years. We are able to do that because this option is going to be $200,000 and we have SIA money on that. So we didn't have SIA money and you look at the budget we have, I don't know how we would purchase any instructional materials.
So that was actually one of my questions on page 23 was exactly the materials. I was curious because on page 28, on page 28, on 300 purchase services, and it says the consumable 410 consumable supplies materials. Below that, okay, 410 textbooks. And it went from,
Right, we didn't need it there because had the grant.
so the
Okay.
SIA is not in this.
Right.
So this is general fund. That's going to be in the 200s.
Okay. Well, that's what I was looking at that. And then, yeah. Okay.
And that's not a lot for textbook adoption. 15,000 is kind of like not going to go too far, but
Yeah.
So for example, the spring I was hired, they were doing social studies textbook adoption, but they only had like $93,000. So they didn't do a K-12 adoption. They only did actually high school. And then my first year on board, we were able to get SIA. And so we finished that part of the adoption except for geography, which we will finish here this year too. So, and then next year is math. And those are major, they're very expensive. English language arts and math are the most expensive adoptions. Well, and science is pretty expensive too. And the district throughout the years has not had money to be able to do those kinds of adoptions, which, you know, you see in the materials that your students are bringing home, and which was also clearly impactful during COVID because other districts had access to digital textbooks because they purchased the most recent curriculum and we did not. So we didn't have digital textbooks that we could just sign our kids up on and they could access it from their Chromebooks.
And so, I mean, this, I now understand this is a bit of an aside because it's SIA, and that's not what we're looking at right now, but so are some of the curriculums that are being looked at have that component now?
They all have it. They have, all of them have that. And I think that, well, you're right, it is a bit of an aside, Karen. I think it's really important for us to understand that the monies that we have, if we didn't have SIA, we would be needing to look at all sorts of state revenue sources and cuts so that we could offer our kids the instructional materials they deserve to be able to be competitive where they're with their peers in other districts.
Is there conversations also though around that about how some often people have moved away from the textbooks and only adopted them if that's what the staff in place and the overseers see as best for the student learning?
We are required by ODE to adopt a publisher. So you're not required to purchase, but you're required to adopt. But most teachers they want the textbook because they're like with SBAC and all of that testing, they're tested on those standards that are found in the textbook. It takes a lot of time to create that on your own. And they're also not experts in that. I mean, there's people that have doctorate degrees that create the curriculum and, so,
So do the staff get surveyed and?
yes.
So
Mhm. Yep.
I've just seen so many textbooks go to waste and.
Yeah.
options and-
No, yeah, we're not doing,
Ton of money.
like, we're going for the high school, middle school and high school, it's a digital type of book, but there's smaller supplements that they get as just have, and then the littles will have their own little textbooks. Yeah.
So the electronic version, how long is that good for?
The cycle of the adoption, and so it's 7 years.
Okay.
And then every 7 years, the new content, the content area gets reviewed by the state. And it could be that they say, oh, well, what you adopted 7 years ago still meets, so you can still keep that. And the publisher will just say, okay, well, you just have to pay your annual fee like you normally do and
Okay.
move forward.
So if something happened 3 years down the road and the students couldn't log in online,
Oh, would we have physical textbooks? Yes, we have physical textbooks.
well, no,
Or,
the other way around.
okay,
Because right now, you said our issue was
we didn't have.
we
this.
didn't have the
Right.
elec-
Yes.
electronic
Right.
access. So now we'll have that.
Yes.
5 years down the
Yes.
road and something happens.
If we had another
Just allow-
pandemic or something, we would
have- have-
not be a problem.
Well,
Yeah, no,
so
we're not
just-
doing another pandemic.
Oh, just the option of kids that are absent or.
Right.
You know, they're
Yeah.
not gonna hold their book home.
Mhm.
You're gonna be like, okay, you've got this,
Exactly,
get on it online.
Yeah. right, for sure.
Okay, still on page 53 on the, under major function 5,000, the 800 other uses. This is where our contingency is, and I want to explain about contingency. This is our contingency graph here. Contingency, the state wants us to have ideally 8.33% of your general fund, general operating budget set aside in contingency. And part of the reason for this is that the state pays us our state school fund in May, but does not pay us in June. They wait until July and then they pay us 2 months worth. And June is when we pay our staff 3 checks. Most of our staff get June, July, and August checks. And so, it's a nice big pocket going out there. So they recommend that we have this 8.33%. And contingency money is money that can't be touched unless the board approves for it to be released. And so that is our, what we've been trying to build it back up. It was going pretty good. But then in 2021, it got dropped way down. And that was, I think, 5% is what it was at. And so we've been trying to, get it back up to that 8%. And last year we were at 7%. This year, to get in balance, I can only get up to 7.35%. We're getting there, but we're not there yet, but it wasn't a good year to make, to make that be a major importance, it was more important to, save our staff.
Well, the fact that you're getting it to go back up. is
I
good.
know, very slowly going up. Yes. All right. So this concludes my segment on the general fund. So are there any other questions about the general fund that you have before we move into the special revenue funds? This is always the part that takes the longest, the general fund. Just so you're not like feeling like, oh. All right, move on to. So this is going to be under tab 6. I'm cutting off part of my little pieces up on top by that Zoom meeting. So in 21-22, our goal that we stated was that we wanted to create a greater capacity to spend and receive grants and other special funds. With the 200 funds, we use the word capacity to spend, because unlike the general fund where we know and we assign the amounts, most of the funds in the 200s tend to be like grant funds. So we can anticipate that we are going to get a certain dollar amount, like for our IDEA grant, our Title 1A, and those kind, SIA, Measure 98. So we build a capacity to receive that money and spend that money. We also want a little cushion in case some unexpected grants, which has happened quite a bit in the last couple of years. In case they come along, we want the capacity to receive those grants without having to go back and do a supplemental budget to be able to spend them. So that is why we increased in 21-22 by quite a bit. But in 22-23, we want to kind of now establish a new normal for our spending capacity as we enter into the post-pandemic phase. Because, these 3 ESSER grants back to back, they were huge, and we didn't know what else was coming. So now things have kind of settled down. So you can't see that top piece. Let's drop this down. So for this summary, everything, all grants in the 200s are included. But at the back, I do an additional breakout of the 251 student investment account, which we refer to as SIA, the 252 high school success, which we also refer to as Measure 98, and the 299 food service fund. Our special revenue funds budget is nearly 1.6 million lower than 21-22 as our food service returned to more of a normal situation and the COVID relief grants are concluding. Okay, so start on page 56. So on 56, you'll see that there are a lot of grants that fall under those 200 special revenue funds. And I've just listed these, the actuals from 1920 or from the 2019-2020 school year, the 2020-21 school year, the adopted budget for 21-22, and then the proposed for 22-23. And we just list through all of those. There's quite a few. And then on page 59, what we do here is we break down the grants in a summary just by function. I don't do this by object because, as you can see, this is rather lengthy to go through and break down each fund, like how much was in the 1,000 instructional function, how much was in support services and enterprise community. So there's, so we just left it with this review of it as far as the expenditures. And then on page 87, you can see that I'm looking at the FTE at the summary of the FTE. 21-22 is 31.73 and 22-23 is 37.75. Get some movement, so the FTEs are actually higher there in our 200 funds than they were prior year.
I'm sorry, this is capacity or actual funds?
For the most part, a lot of these are actual funds. Now, if we look at the very first page 56, an example. Okay. Yeah, the Medicaid, we don't have those funds actually. We're proposing 225,000, but we just started doing the Medicaid program, and so it's money that we get from the federal government for these little surveys they take. And when our staff has spent time on certain students that would qualify, they take that time and they kind of pay us back money for it. And so we think we might get $225,000. We don't really know because we don't know how those surveys are going to go throughout the year. We don't know how long they're going to take to pay us because that can take a very long time to get from the point you turn in your survey before you get the payment.
And the survey isn't, they're not paying for work. The survey is just finding a need.
The survey is actually, the survey says, hey, on this day, who did you meet with? You know, how much of your time was spent on these surveys?
They have to account for their time in 15-minute increments and how they spent their time. And we identify which people it would be appropriate to ask.
Right.
And so then they ask those people and then they code their time. And then the Medicaid people go back and they say, okay, yes, this counts. Nope, not that. Yes, yes, yes. So these are new monies that we are generated for work we've already been doing for years.
Right,
So we're
okay.
finally realizing.
Yeah, it just wasn't
Yeah.
clear when you
Yeah.
said they do a survey.
Survey, yeah,
Like, well, are you spending the time
yeah.
doing the
no,
survey and that's what you're getting
Yeah,
paid for?
no, we're just accounting
Yeah,
for the
got it.
time that we spend during our day.
So since you don't know for sure the amount and when it's paid, is that part budget yet? Or is that maybe money that's gonna come on top of?
Well, there's not anything, we don't have staff funded out of there. It's just, it's like a pocket of money where that we know we can use for certain things if we need to. So it's not, there are some where we have staff coming out of it, Title 1A, which is Fund 211 and 212. So we alter years. So let's see, what we do is it's kind of split between the two because what's going to happen is first we're going to use up the old fund and pay our staff. And once that fund is used up, we're going to switch to the new pot of money, which is going to be the Fund 212. And we're going to point all their payments to that Fund 212 and start paying them out of that. So those are monies that we know we're going to get in from the, you know, for a Title 1A. Because they already have told us, here's your allocation, which you're going to receive. Now, Title 3, we kind of guessed because we don't really know what we're going to get. So, and then there's like this miscellaneous local, state, and federal grants. That one, we really don't know what we're going to get either. Those are just small little things that come in. And, you know, like Creighton will get a garden club for $2,000 and a small grant comes in and spends it. There are, in addition, on 240, let's see, 240 is our facilities grant. 243 is our building sale proceeds. If you look at 243, that's a true number that's going to come in right now. That's where that fund is standing. It's money that's just kind of been sitting and used, you know, only kind of, okay, we've got an emergency with the building and we need to do something and we might use it. So those are some figures that are already there and in the bank. So, you know, there's some funds like that as well.
This isn't confusing at all.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So the building sale, that represents the building that's actually sold.
We sold North Howell building. And so as the proceeds went into this fund.
That was right before COVID, or that was the year before COVID, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was my first year here.
Okay,
and
that's
some-
what it sounded like, but you know,
Yeah.
budget language, I'm
Yeah.
not sure.
And a big pocket of that was used on the energy project that they did. And that's why I kind of did it. All right, so now we are breaking out here into the student investment account, and that's tab 7. So that is included with the 200s, but we also did a little breakout of it. And so if you look to page 89, there's a nice little summary here on the student investment account. Kind of tells you how this money is supposed to be used. Oregon is kind of interesting because they don't just add money to the state school fund. They give you a pocket of money and make you, you know, account for how you're going to spend it, and report it, and then report how you spent it and give reports on what you did. They really make you work for it, really. And so this SIA is one of those grants. And then we just show like how we've been spending it by object and how we've been spending it by function. About that. And then this is in my way here, so I'm gonna write this down. And then in the SIA, we are projecting that to be about $68,000 lower. And that's not lower because we're getting less money. It's lower because last year we thought, or this year that we're in, we thought we were going to get more money because they were kind of saying that they had more money going into that fund, and we were hopeful that more money would come to us, but it didn't. All right, so page 96. And this just shows SIA that we have a little extra staffing, allocated to that fund, SIA fund. And then moving on to page 98, tab 8, page 98. This is that same kind of a summary for the high school success, also referred to as Measure 98. And this is projected to be about the same amount as we got last year. And then if you look to page 102, and we are projecting about $17,000 increase. So this is interesting because I did tell you people were moved to Measure 98 in high school. And you look at this and you see that the staffing went down. That is because in 2021, we shifted a lot of staff to SIA. They gave us kind of special permission because of COVID to do that. And so we put them into there. And when we adopted the budget for 21-22, I left them in there, but we couldn't have that many in there. So we had to do some shifting out and back into general fund. And so it is an increase. It just doesn't appear that way on the budget. All right, so as far as really getting more. All right, so next is the food service. Don't know how I got that to come up. Okay, in the food service, the budget is $526,000 lower than 21-22. So if you can go to page 104, you'll see the graph on this. And this graph excludes the ending fund balance. So I wouldn't try to match it with those numbers because it won't, because the ending fund balances are in the 1920 and 2021 figures there. So 19 on the graph, 2019 and 2020 are the actuals. And you already see the impact of COVID coming into the 2020 figure. And then the 2021 is an actual, and you see, and this is all COVID related hikes in food service. And so we adopted a very generous budget for 21-22 because we're still uncertain as far as what would happen. But we talked about this at the budget meeting last year and said it will likely be reduced this year, but we just don't know what to expect. So we wanted to keep it high and have that capacity. So you see that we're dropping back down to where we think it should be and what it's safe to be. All right, are there any questions about special revenue funds before we move to really small section? Okay, we are going to move on now to debt service. So if you go to page 107, Fund 314, PERS UAL debt service, that's our 2021 new PERS bond that we did. And this is helping us save as far as how much we pay for our PERS rates. So that's been added in, that's a new one. And we also have an error on this one. So I'm going to show you this spreadsheet. So this 1168 is what it should be. I'm going to go back to show you what it was. So in your books, it's 1,129,261. It should be 1,168.
1
million, sorry. So that is an error. And so these are the changes highlighted, which is changing this to 1,168,000, which would bring this total right here to 1,705,505. So, because that's our true payment that we're gonna pay on this 2003 bond. Right. Okay, so capital projects, tab 11. You'll see that nothing's kind of going on in there, and there's just a little residual data from 1920. And next year, if the bond doesn't pass, then that would be gone and we wouldn't even be showing you the capital projects fund because it would all be zeroed out. But if we pass the bond, then this fund becomes active again. So are there any questions regarding debt service or capital projects?
The bond doesn't pass, then I assume there'll be things that have to be budgeted in because there'll still be things that have to be done. Whether we get the additional money to do it or not, like the roof's leaking, then it's gonna have to be fixed, right?
Mhm. Well, like that building sale proceeds fund I showed you with the 600,000. I mean, that is already set up, you know, if we needed to use it, you know, it's in the proper places to be used.
So basically that was on, all that money is just like in suspended animation,
That's actually real money in the sixth.
right? But it's not in the budget.
It is in the budget. It's a
Okay.
200 fund budget.
It's not being dedicated, it's not been identified on what we're spending it on, but it is there and available.
Just part, is it part of the total money considered spent? Or is it in addition to that?
It's okay. So it is there in the revenue line. We have to, in order to balance it, we have to put an expenditure against the revenue.
Mhm.
Whether we spend it or not, we have to put that line item. So the line item is there that, and I think it's in capital projects is what we put it in, that we could use that fund for spending if we wanted to. So it's, you know, it's kind of like planning and showing how we might use the fund.
But it's not being used like none of that's being used to support instruction,
Right.
transportation, food services, none of that. It's its own section there. So the question that you asked is, if the bond doesn't pass, we then use some of this funding to, you know, go forward. So if you added up, the sale, property sale was at like 600 some $1,000. And then what I call our ice cream money, Frontier Charter, at 700 and some thousand. And then the excise tax, which is 200. If you have like 1.5 million, that doesn't even fix the high school roof. And so I'm not sure that I would be advising the board to really use much of that money for anything, because if we had a catastrophic event and we had to do something like right away that wasn't covered by insurance, like I call it a catastrophic event, but insurance isn't going to cover it. Like the whole plumbing system blows out because it's from 1960 over there. Insurance is not going to cover the system failing because that systems fail. It would cover some of the damage, but not a lot. And so then our choice is, okay, well, now we need to repair the plumbing so that kids can get to school. And now we've wiped it out to zero.
But so that money is, does it show up in the budget? You know what I mean? I know it's sitting there like we can use it. It's line item so that it can be used for things. But when you say, okay, here's expenditures and here's the assets or the money that we have, is it included in that? Here's the money or assets that we have?
Yes. Okay. Any other questions?
So how your prediction of how long the district is sustainable if the bond doesn't pass?
Well, that, you know, that's a hard question to answer because, you know, like any of us, we go away for the weekend and we come back and the house is flooded because the valve at the washing machine broke and, you know, we didn't expect it. It's, our buildings are such a state of disrepair at this point and kind of bubble gum, duct tape together. If we had something major happen, it would be immediate. I mean, I think that if we don't do something within 3 to 5 years, we're done. I don't know how the amount of repairs that need to be done, you could cut every staff member and you still would not have enough money to do the repairs, the replacements. And so, it's kind of like a house, right? It gets to a certain tipping point. If you don't invest it,
Yeah.
keep your house up, eventually it's not worth anything. And you can't repair it. So,
And when we had the wind and rainstorm, they were this leak, the elementary roof. It was like there were floods all over the place and it was just really kind of eye-opening to, you know, the needs over there.
that was this
Tiles
winter's
were
wind
falling
and
and-
storm, yeah. And why the insurance company covered part of that, they're not gonna cover leaking because the roof needed to be replaced.
Mhm.
Like that's,
Mhm.
So they did some patches on the roof this time, the insurance did, and helped with the mitigation of it, but there was a question on why that roof had not yet been replaced. So it's in there, you know, and we said, well, we are working on that, trying to pass a bond, you know, so. Anyway. All right, I'm going back to the agenda, Alan.
So clear-
You're up.
Look, it's up here, it's up on the
Well, you
screen.
know,
So we open for public comment?
Yes.
Any comments? Anybody here? Okay, well, hearing none,
Okay.
questions?
I can tell you there were a lot of really great questions here tonight and, you know, when we held it remotely last year, it didn't allow as much of a comfortable situation to ask the questions, I think. So I really, really appreciate being able to hold it in person.
So essentially, we had to cut 1.3 million.
Basically, that was.
So who's gonna see that? I mean, do students see it?
What area does it impact the most?
Yeah.
maybe?
I mean, I know you've tried to minimize it, so it's a little
Yeah.
spread everywhere.
yeah, I think we've done a pretty good job in holding the students harmless from the impacts of it. I mean, I think that what we've continued to do at the elementary school is create classroom blends. So instead of having just straight K, 3 kindergartners, 3 first grade classrooms, 3 second grade classrooms, we've looked at where we can blend those. And so we have, you know, a K1 blend or a 3-4 blend. And so that impacts staff because that's kind of a different style of teaching. I would say like, where does it impact? It impacts staff the most because we're still giving them the resources, like the curriculum, and it's now, we're asking them to do more. We haven't built in this budget any more planning time, so we haven't added days to their contract. And so we're not reducing programs in terms of extracurricular at this point. We're keeping all of that whole. So does that answer the?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It sounds like deferred maintenance is continuing to be deferred.
Yeah, it's not like we're gonna pour a couple $1 million into any building to.
What is the average class size elementary?
We've been able to keep that in the K3 section between 18 and 22 kids. And then they have instructional assistants as well to help them in the classrooms. In the 4-5, they're more at the 24 to 26 level. And then middle school and middle school is a little cramped. They have more class sizes of 25 to 28, 30. But at the high school, they have still some small class sizes. So you know, if the situation doesn't resolve itself with the enrollment, that we will have to next spring be making additional reductions at the staff level at the high school. And I feel like we could make some adjustments that wouldn't significantly impact kids. I think we still have that cushion. After next year, it will be more problematic. So after, if we're at this time next year budgeting, what will that be? The
223.
Yeah. 20,
Oh,
for the,
it'll be the 23, 24, yeah.
next year.
What kind of turnout did they have for the kindergarten roundup?
Well, we had 52 kindergartners last Thursday, which is more than we've ever had for the springtime. Normally we get about 40 kids and then, 25 of them show up in September. It's time to come to school. But so this year we had 52. So we're hopeful that then next fall we'll get another 15 or 20 kids. But as we were doing that, I asked elementary staff, Dr. Helms, I said, I think you need to figure out, how do we find the kids that might just randomly show up for first grade? Because kindergarten is not required. And so a lot of parents kept their kinders home this year, but they're ready to start first grade in the fall. And so we need to know, where are they? Are they really going to show up? We can't have 40 first graders showing up in September. I mean, I would love that to happen. But we have a strategy in place. If it does, we can absorb those kids.
I know that just anecdotally, there's families all around that are just like, kept my kid out and
Yeah.
they're gonna put them in kindergarten next year,
Mhm.
even though they're the age of first grade, but they're like, you know what? We're just doing this to be on the safe
Yeah.
side, and so, that might help mitigate.
Mhm.
But some of
Yeah.
them might be like, no, I want my kid in first grade.
Right.
I don't know if there's a mechanism to say, let's do some readiness assessment.
Yeah,
Here's
we
what you
actually,
did, and-
we talked about that. I had so many conversations. I can't remember who I talked to about that today. But about, do we have a plan in place for when they show up in the fall to kind of determine what would be our recommendation for placement, working with parents?
So if we get an influx of, 50, 75 students that we weren't anticipating, does that increase our funding from the general fund or the schools fund?
It does.
Okay.
But what I would do is we would adjust to meet the needs of what we have, but not go gangbusters and be adding a
Right.
bunch of stuff. I also think that we have, just from kind of the targeted recruitment that I've been doing, I think it's possible we could get an influx of kids in middle school and high school from a particular population. I don't want to really say what that looks like right now, but I'm hearing a lot of feedback from parents who want to come to our schools, see what it looks like in terms of staff, talk with them. So I'm hopeful that we can get to that number. I think that parents want a smaller community where they know the teachers and they can have conversations with their students' teachers, and where kids are known. And I think we offer that. So.
Is there, I mean, again, I know this is a little bit of an aside, but it's relevant. Is there like recruitment things? Because in some neighboring districts, there's a lot of pretty extreme behavior issues. And I'm wondering if that's not going on here. And if so, that would be a huge
Mhm.
selling point.
That I have created, excuse me, some recruitment materials with our newsletter. We have a person that we've contracted with to do some of our newsletters and communication pieces paid out of SIA. And so he just finished a recruitment brochure for us. And so that'll be targeted. You have to be kind of careful. I can't buy a billboard in Woodburn. I've thought about it. I've thought about it. But I can definitely drop brochures off randomly in Safeway or.
Well, and there's social media and there's,
Yeah.
Enlisting the kids to.
Yes, for sure. Mhm.
Highlight.
I just say I need 100 kids. I just need 100 kids.
It's like we only need 265.
Yeah.
265, we get the bond. All we need, 265.
Yes, votes.
Do
Yeah.
you have an idea of what the Amazon plant is how it's gonna impact?
Good question.
Well, they say that that's going to bring on about 2,300 jobs. And so, I mean, we know that some people that currently live in the area will apply for those jobs, but then that will create other openings from the positions that they had previously held. So I think at the very least, it'll be a trickle effect, right, like.
Yeah.
The other piece is that, Woodburn's housing is going gangbusters.
I was just gonna say
They have
Woodburn's
so
been-
much housing
yeah.
going in right now.
Apartment school.
And so they're a little concerned, Woodburn's, about what could happen with the influx. I'm like, I could take 25 of your kids. Rent a bus right there, right?
Yeah.
Bring them to work. and-
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll pick them up.
Bus
yeah.
stop.
We'll have one right there. Bus
Yep.
stop right there.
So-
When is that supposed to be finished?
2024.
Still a couple of years.
Thing went up so quick though. I
Yeah.
think it's just,
It's amazing.
yeah.
And we have a line, Jervis School District have a line that goes right over and touches up
It-
those houses.
It does. When I worked in Silver Falls, we had an agreement with Mount Angel where, we had families that transferred both ways into Mount Angel and Silver Falls. So we would run a route that would drop kids off at the middle school there, and then kids that wanted to come to Silver Falls, they would jump on the bus and come that way. It was a wonderful agreement. There was never any problems. The new superintendent, when he takes over, Joe, I know Joe, if we could get kids that would be wanting to transfer and we could just do a roundabout in the development that's right there off of Valor. I don't know if you've been out that way and seen those new housing going in and some duplexes and stuff. I'm open to asking him for permission.
Are they prepared for this mass influx of?
I think they're unsure what that's gonna look like.
Yeah.
Right now Woodburn is down in enrollment as well. I think they're down about 300 kids.
Mm.
So, I think it's hard for them to
Yeah.
know, and they are unsure who all is going to be coming into the housing that they have developed, right? But here's what I also know in the conversation that we've been having kind of at the state level is with the crisis that's been happening at the border. It will take about 2 years for that to hit our area. And that could bring all sorts of ramifications with it in terms of an influx of unhoused and low socioeconomic students that are going to need a lot of assistance. So there's a lot of unknowns.
We already had a lot of unknowns.
We have, this kind of been
Yeah,
the,
And now.
I think it'll be
and
the
it's still-
decade of unknowns.
Yeah,
That's
it's
what's
and
gonna
it's
be
still
known
coming.
for.
They're just never know. We'll do our best.
Yep, back to me. So. Do we try a vote right now? Or is anybody saying that they're not comfortable voting at this moment? So we just need to set a new date?
Well, it sounds like if it's approved, there's not a new date needed, right?
Correct. So it sounds like we may be interested in voting.
We try.
Give it a shot.
I say,
This is there's two motions. There would be a motion to approve the budget. And this figure does include that change to debt service. The one on Andy's budget message had the old.
Oh,
figure, so
right.
We will fix
Right.
that in as well. And then there's the taxes, which is currently at 4.6427 per 1,000.
And that's the permanent fund. Remember, that's the one that money gets collected and then it goes to the state and they say, yes, you can keep all of it, or you're gonna get your general fund reduced or whatever. None of that goes towards your bond. This is not any information about the bond.
Yeah. And that's been the same that's one that's been the same for many, many years, so.
Okay.
It's been sitting there. 4.6427.
Who picks that number? I mean, like, how does that number come about?
Um,
0.6.
Well, I know that there are rules on when you increase it, how much you are allowed to increase. And you have to go through processes for doing that as well. But as far as the starting point, I don't know. I have to look historically back and pick it up.
So if the bond didn't pass, or even if it did, and then you get the contractors to come out and give the bids, and it's like, okay, well, it's still not gonna quite cover it. I heard you say this has been the same for ever, like
Mhm.
decades. Could that number, so being 4.6,
go to
you
6.
looked at to go higher?
Because all it does is make us get less state.
Oh, yeah, because it goes to the state.
Yeah,
That doesn't
this,
go to
this
us.
permanent rate is
Yeah.
just,
That's it. I remember
just
saying that.
teachers, like, like your everyday budget, right? That it can't go to anything else. To get your buildings were like Portland Public does an art tax. That's a special levy. So that's in addition to your permanent rate.
And you said per ballot measure 5, they're trying to avoid inequities. But you said that if you go above a certain number, they sweep the difference. So is this our maximum that we can collect without losing?
They don't sweep it, and I don't know Measure 5, so I can't really address Measure 5.
Switched it from property tax, wasn't it, to the state saying, you get this much money.
Yeah.
get the funding.
And this is how this permanent rate was set based on like, they looked at each district and they said, okay, this, whatever ground zero was. And then at each year, then you could increase it by a certain percentage. But as you did that, they still said like, okay, you can still only collect, let's make it, it's $9,000 per kid right now. You're not going to collect because you've levied yourself more taxes, $15 a kid. So,
Yeah, okay. So a vote yes says no change.
Right.
correct.
So do we have a motion on the budget?
Got one. So,
Yeah, the motion to approve the budget.
yeah, so you just need to read that motion.
Okay, so I guess I'll make a motion. I move that the Budget Committee of the Jervis School District has reviewed and hereby approves the budget for the 2022-2023 fiscal year in the amount of $29,096,113. This is comprised of general fund in the amount of $19,455,777, special revenue of $7,934,831, debt service $1,705,505, capital projects of $0. That's an easy one. For a grand total of the $29,096,113.
I second the motion.
I'll second that.
Oh,
So,
flip a go.
Flip a coin.
Oh, that was Anna.
Yeah.
It's either Anna or
Oh,
Maria.
that was Anna. Give it to Anna.
Oh, I second the motion.
Yeah, see?
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 So I'm gonna let somebody else make the motion on the second one because I don't live in district. And I don't think it's appropriate for me to assess what you guys are paying taxes on.
I move the Budget Committee of Jervis School District #1 approve taxes for the 2022-2023 fiscal year at the rate of 4.6427 per thousand of asset value of operating purposes in the general fund. So we have motion and
Karen
second.
second, yeah.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm abstaining for the record.
Okay.
But that should be 6 votes, and so it should be approved.
All right, thank you. And now I'll do my little thank you slide. Thank you for your time and commitment to the Jervis School District community and
We're
most
adjourned.
important parent students.
Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for putting together such a great booklet.
Yeah, I think of more when I'm putting the slides together. That's why I get a few extras in there. I really wanted to get this out to you with time, to review.
Sandra, can you
This was very well.
read this here?
I do see that ballot measure 5 was passed by Oregon voters in November of 1990.
Yep.
And I read through it. It did have to do with the tax
Yep.
and school district.
Yep.
We're gonna get cut because they were passing that and it was changing school funding and schools like, okay, well, if they pass that, then why not cut this many teachers? And we're like, yeah,
Where did you teach? Where do you
Sandy,
teach?
I was at Sandy High School then.
Okay, guys, I gotta go. I'll see you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Thanks, bye.
So
If you stop sharing your screen, then you can go up there.